The sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Willow Creek, Colorado, as Hannah Crawford clutched her children's hands tightly, her heart heavy with the weight of rejection. The year was 1879, and she had traveled over 300 miles with her 3 young sons after her husband's death, only to be turned away by her late husband's brother with cruel words that still echoed in her mind. "We don't have room for a woman with 3 mouths to feed," he had said, not even inviting them inside despite the journey they had made. Thomas made his choice when he left to seek his fortune. His debts aren't our burden. Now Hannah stood in the center of a town she didn't know, with only $20 to her name and 3 exhausted boys looking to her for answers she didn't have. 8-year-old James, 6-year-old Samuel, and 4-year-old William stared up at her with tired eyes, their clothes dusty from travel, their stomachs empty since morning. "Mama, where will we sleep tonight?" James asked, his voice small but determined to be brave. Hannah swallowed the lump in her throat. "We'll find a place, darling. God provides for those in need." But as she looked around at the unfamiliar faces passing by, none meeting her eyes, her faith wavered. She had sold nearly everything to make this journey, believing family would welcome them. Now, as the afternoon waned, she felt more alone than the day she had buried her husband. The stagecoach that had brought them to Willow Creek had already departed. Hannah guided her boys to a wooden bench outside the general store, instructing them to sit while she gathered her thoughts. She smoothed her travel-worn dress, adjusted her bonnet, and tried to appear more composed than she felt. "You folks look like you could use some help," a deep voice said from behind her. Hannah turned to find a tall man in a worn leather vest and dusty hat watching her with concerned eyes. His face was tanned from years under the sun, with lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but something about his steady gaze made Hannah's racing heart calm slightly. "We're just resting a moment," she replied, straightening her spine. Pride was one of the few possessions she had left. "The boys and I have had a long journey." The man nodded, his eyes taking in the 3 tired children and their single carpetbag. "Name's Dawson Baxter," he said, tipping his hat. "I run the Circle B ranch outside of town." "Hannah Crawford," she responded with a small nod. "These are my sons, James, Samuel, and William." Dawson crouched down to the children's level. "That's quite a journey for such young cowboys." His smile revealed a small gap between his front teeth. "Where are you folks heading?" Before Hannah could formulate a vague answer, young William spoke up. "Uncle Elijah doesn't want us 'cause we eat too much." Hannah's cheeks burned with shame. "William," she admonished gently. Dawson's expression darkened momentarily before he schooled it back to neutrality. "Is that so?" He stood slowly, towering over Hannah's petite frame. "Mrs. Crawford, do you have arrangements for the night?" "We'll manage," she replied, though she had no idea how. Dawson studied her for a long moment. "The hotel here charges $2 a night. The boarding house is full with miners. There's a storm brewing from the west." He pointed to dark clouds gathering on the horizon. "I've got a foreman's cabin sitting empty at my ranch. It's nothing fancy, but it's dry and warm." Hannah hesitated. A proper lady didn't accept such offers from strange men, but she wasn't just a lady anymore, she was a mother with children who needed shelter. "I couldn't impose," she said weakly. "It's no imposition." "My housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, would welcome the company. She's getting on in years and loves children." He smiled again. "Besides, I could use some help around the ranch if you're willing to work." Hannah felt her boy's eyes on her, waiting. She had nowhere else to go, and night was approaching with those threatening clouds. This man seemed decent enough, and the mention of a housekeeper provided a measure of propriety. "Very well, Mr. Baxter. We accept your kind offer, at least for tonight." Dawson nodded as if he'd expected no other answer. "My wagon's just down the street. We should head out before that storm catches us." The ride to the Circle B ranch took nearly an hour, during which the boys peppered Dawson with questions about horses, cattle, and whether there were Indians nearby. Hannah noticed how patient he was with their inquiries, answering each one thoughtfully. "Are you married, Mr. Baxter?" Samuel asked innocently. "Samuel," Hannah gasped. Dawson chuckled. "It's all right, Mrs. Crawford. No, young man, I'm not married. Never found the time, I suppose." As they crested a hill, the ranch came into view, a sprawling main house, a large barn, bunkhouse, and several smaller cabins scattered around. Cattle dotted the pastures, and horses grazed in a nearby corral. It was larger than Hannah had expected. "This is all yours?" she asked, unable to hide her surprise. "Built it from nothing," Dawson replied with modest pride. "Started with 10 acres and 3 skinny cows 15 years ago. Now I've got 8,000 acres and 500 head of cattle." They pulled up to a neat cabin set a short distance from the main house. It was small but well-maintained, with curtains in the windows and a small porch. "This is the foreman's cabin," Dawson explained. "My last foreman moved on 6 months ago, and I haven't found the right replacement yet. It's yours for as long as you need it." Inside, the cabin was simple but clean, a main room with a stove, table, and chairs, and 2 small bedrooms. Mrs. Abernathy, a stout woman with silver hair and kind eyes, had apparently been informed of their arrival, as a pot of stew bubbled on the stove and fresh bread sat cooling on the table. "You poor dears must be famished," she clucked, already ladling stew into bowls for the boys. "Eat up now. Growing boys need their strength." As the children ate ravenously, Hannah turned to Dawson. "Mr. Baxter, I can't thank you enough, but I need to be clear. We won't be charity cases. I'll work to pay our way." Dawson nodded approvingly. "I expected nothing less, Mrs. Crawford. We can discuss terms tomorrow. For now, get some rest." After he left, Mrs. Abernathy helped Hannah settle the boys into one bedroom with a large bed they could share. The older woman chatted as she worked, filling Hannah in on the ranch. "Mr. Baxter's a good man," she said quietly as they made up Hannah's bed in the second room. "Works harder than any 2 men. This ranch is his life." "He's been very kind," Hannah acknowledged. "Kind, yes, but don't mistake it for weakness. He's fair but expects honest work. This ranch runs like clockwork because of it." Mrs. Abernathy paused. "If you don't mind my asking, what happened to your husband?" Hannah smoothed the quilt with trembling hands. "Pneumonia last winter. Thomas worked at a lumber mill in Pennsylvania. We had a good life, but when he passed, there were debts I didn't know about, the house, everything had to be sold." Mrs. Abernathy patted her hand. "Well, you're here now, and if you ask me, the good Lord has a way of putting us where we need to be, even when we can't see it ourselves." After the older woman left, Hannah sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself a moment to release the tears she'd been holding back for her children's sake. She cried for Thomas, for the rejection they'd faced, for the uncertainty ahead. When her tears were spent, she washed her face, said her prayers, and slipped into the first real bed she'd had in weeks, listening to the storm that had indeed arrived, rattling the windows as rain pounded the roof. The next morning, Hannah woke before dawn, determined to prove her worth. She dressed quickly and found the boys still sleeping soundly. In the main room, she was surprised to find Dawson sitting at the table, a cup of coffee in his hand. "You're up early," he commented, rising when she entered. "I wanted to get started," she replied. "What would you like me to do first?" Dawson smiled. "Coffee?" He poured her a cup without waiting for an answer. "Mrs. Abernathy usually handles the cooking for the ranch hands. There are 12 men in the bunkhouse, plus me and the occasional visitor. She could use help with that, the cleaning and the laundry." "It's a lot for a woman her age," Hannah nodded. "I'm a good cook and I don't mind hard work." "There's something else," Dawson said, his expression turning serious. "The school teacher left town 2 months ago to get married. The children here have been without lessons since." "Your oldest boy mentioned you were a teacher before you married." Hannah's eyes widened. "Yes, I taught for 3 years in Philadelphia. Would you consider teaching here? There are 8 children on neighboring ranches plus your own. We converted an old storage building into a schoolhouse, but it sits empty." Hope flickered in Hannah's chest. Teaching had been her passion before marriage. I would be honored, but I'll still help Mrs. Abernathy as needed. Good. I'll pay you $15 a month for teaching, plus room and board here for you and your boys. It was a generous offer, more than she had dared hope for. Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We'll earn our keep. Over the next weeks, Hannah fell into a rhythm at the Circle B. Mornings were spent teaching in the small schoolhouse, where her 8 students, including her own sons, showed varying levels of education but equal enthusiasm. Afternoons found her helping Mrs. Abernathy with cooking and household tasks. The boys thrived in the open spaces of the ranch. James, serious and responsible, shadowed the ranch hands whenever possible, learning to ride and help with simple chores. Samuel, always curious, became fascinated with the blacksmith's work and spent hours watching the massive man shape metal with fire and hammer. William, the baby, followed Dawson like a puppy whenever the rancher was near, peppering him with endless questions that Dawson answered with remarkable patience. Hannah found herself watching Dawson when he didn't notice. She observed how he treated his men with respect, how he worked alongside them rather than just giving orders. She noticed his gentleness with animals, his quiet competence in everything he did. And sometimes, she caught him watching her too, quickly looking away when their eyes met. One evening, after the boys were asleep, Hannah sat on the porch of the cabin enjoying the cool night air. Dawson approached, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, offering her one of the cups. "Please do," she replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, looking at the stars that blanketed the sky. "Your boys are settling in well," Dawson commented. Hannah smiled. "They are. I've never seen them so happy. James told me yesterday he wants to be a rancher when he grows up." "He's got a good head on his shoulders. That boy pays attention." Dawson hesitated. "Hannah, Mrs. Crawford, I hope you're finding your place here as well." "I am," she assured him. "Everyone has been kind, and are you happy here?" The question caught her off guard. Was she happy? After months of grief and worry, happiness seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford to consider. Yet here, in this moment, with the peaceful night around them and her children sleeping safely nearby, she realized she was. "Yes," she said softly. "I believe I am." Dawson nodded, seeming pleased. "Good, that's good." As summer turned to fall, Hannah noticed subtle changes in her relationship with Dawson. He began finding reasons to stop by the schoolhouse, bringing books he thought might be useful or supplies the children needed. He invited her and the boys to Sunday dinner at the main house, a tradition that soon became weekly. He sought her opinion on ranch matters, valuing her perspective in a way Thomas never had. The ranch hands noticed too, exchanging knowing glances when Dawson lingered after dinner to talk with Hannah, or when he personally delivered firewood to her cabin rather than sending one of the hands. Mrs. Abernathy took to humming wedding tunes whenever Dawson and Hannah were in the same room, causing Hannah to blush furiously. One crisp October afternoon, Hannah was gathering late wildflowers with William when they encountered Dawson returning from checking fence lines. He dismounted, leading his horse as he joined them in the meadow. "These are for Mama's table," William explained seriously, showing Dawson his small bouquet. "Fine choices," Dawson replied, equally serious. "Your mama deserves pretty things." William nodded enthusiastically. "Mama says you're the kindest man she's ever known." Hannah felt heat rush to her face. William, Dawson's eyes met hers, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Did she now?" "MMHMM. She told Mrs. Abernathy you have the nicest eyes too." William Crawford. Hannah wanted the ground to open up and swallow her. Dawson chuckled, clearly enjoying her discomfort. "Well, I'm flattered, Mrs. Crawford. Children and their imagination